Today, a substantial milestone in human history.
The World Health Organization has made it official. Smallpox throughout the world has been virtually eliminated.
Wiped off the face of the earth and will never return.
In 1979, the world celebrated the greatest triumph in public health history, the eradication of smallpox.
A disease that has killed more human beings than all the wars in recorded time will then quietly pass into the history books.
The campaign to eradicate smallpox was the first successful attempt to globally exterminate a disease, and it galvanized the world to target others. But after 40 years and billions of dollars, why has it proven so hard to eradicate the next disease?
The possibility that I would go and work for WHO seemed so much larger than me or anything I'd ever done before. And I was 27.
Dr. Larry Brilliant was a young physician who blazed an unconventional trail into the world of public health.
Wavy Gravy, who was the master of ceremonies at Woodstock and a clown, he said, let's go to Nepal. And that seemed like a great idea. And we had these 40-foot-long buses, and there were 40 kids living in unimaginable sleeping arrangements. I mean, we were not very conservative.
Brilliant would make his way to India and become a disciple of one of the country's most famous gurus.
For about a year, I would sit there and meditate, as we all would, and he would start throwing apples at my testicles. And then one day he called me over and he said, Dr. America, that's the name he gave me. I want you to go to WHO, and I want you to be part of a program to eradicate smallpox.
The World Health Assembly in Geneva voted to undertake a 10-year program to eradicate smallpox throughout the world.
I walked into WHO and I said, I live in the Himalayas. I'm a doctor. My guru, who lives in the Himalayas too, he said that I'm supposed to work for you and God is going to help eradicate smallpox. And they kicked me out. I went back and they kicked me out again and again. Then one day there was a telegram that said, come to report to work for WHO on Monday morning.
In 1973, he became one of the youngest doctors ever to join the World Health Organization's smallpox eradication campaign in India.
There were 250,000, mostly children, who got smallpox. Sometimes I would go into a village and there'd be bodies stacked like cords of wood and eyes blinded by the disease, boils all over his or her body. Mothers would come and bring their children and say, Doctor, heal my child. And there was nothing you could do. There's no treatment for smallpox. It was a very contagious disease and a very lethal disease.
A third of those who were infected would die, but not before passing on the virus to an average of 7 more people. The best way to stop smallpox from spreading was to vaccinate everyone around an infected individual. But finding hidden cases in a chaotic country was not that easy.
There you go.
Thank you.
Indian popcorn.
Shukriya.
Brilliant recently returned to a market in India where he first searched for smallpox in 1973.
And we would do marketplace surveillance in addition to house-to-house surveillance. So we'd have to come here and we would do some spectacular. We'd get a clown, we'd give kids stuff, and then everyone would come and we'd say, have you seen anybody who looked like this? And we'd hold up a picture of a child with smallpox.
Okay.
And we'd say, Suchna Dana Walako, Ek Hazar Inam Malega. So the first person who finds a case like this will give 1,000 rupees.
In an era before cell phones and satellite maps, over 100 million households were checked repeatedly by an army of Indian health workers.
We weren't finding all the cases of smallpox. Children would run away. We couldn't vaccinate them. And the district magistrate said, you need to have an elephant. You need to have an elephant and a parade and horns. And if you have a parade, all the children will come. You can find any hidden cases. And that's what I did. WHO had a very dim view of what I was doing. It certainly was not part of our protocol, but it worked. And I don't think that we could have eradicated smallpox as quickly as we did without breaking rules.
On October 16, 1975, 2-year-old Rahima Banu was the last person to be diagnosed with variola major the deadliest strain of the smallpox virus.
I remember looking at her and thinking, when her scabs fell off and she coughed out whatever viruses were still in her lungs and they landed on the ground in Bangladesh and the sun baked them, that was the end of a disease that had been the worst disease in history.
In 1988, energized by the success of the smallpox program, the global public health community moved to tackle another ancient scourge, polio, a killer virus which paralyzed more than 300,000 people that year. The new campaign surged ahead, and polio was eliminated from 118 countries in only 14 years. But then,
suddenly, the disease is spreading again.
Religion and suspicion have helped fuel the disease in the north.
in 2003, distrust between Muslim leaders and the Nigerian government spawned a rumor that polio vaccination was a Western ploy to sterilize Muslim youth.
In Nigeria, the imams issued a fatwa against the polio program, and doing so created an epidemic of polio.
The impact of this boycott led to re-importation of the virus to nearly 20 countries.
Heidi Larson maps the rumors that can lead to resistance to vaccines. In Nigeria, these stories were as contagious and lethal as the virus.
This is a map that we put up to mark all the negative vaccine reports that we were getting. The underlying issue was distrust in a big way. When you have a vaccine that's brought to your door repeatedly, when you're not getting many of the other very basic health needs that you feel like you need more, it prompts suspicion.
The Nigerian boycott drove home a hard lesson that even with scientific advances in a globalized world, the key to an eradication campaign is public trust, and it can disappear in an instant.
The United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda.
The CIA has admitted it used a fake vaccination program in 2011 to collect blood samples in the search for Osama bin Laden.
In Pakistan, opposition to the polio program exploded following these reports.
This was exactly an example of throwing a firecracker in the midst of a highly fertile, suspicious ground, and it really set things back.
A two-day killing spree in Pakistan.
Over the past year, there have been a number of attacks on health workers distributing the polio vaccine, for which the Pakistani Taliban has claimed responsibility.
Suspicions around CIA involvement in mass vaccination campaigns have been there for years. A decade ago, I could confidently go to communities and sit with them saying, you know, this is for the best interest of children, this is not a covert effort, and I could not say that now.
A lot of people in the world thought that was the end of the polio program and that they would never succeed. It certainly makes you realize the interplay between global politics and disease control.
And in today's world, the next threat could be right around the corner.
The Ebola virus is back.
It is a terrifying virus, highly infectious, quick to kill, with no vaccine and no cure.
In 2014, the country of Nigeria was poised to be the epicenter for the Ebola virus to spread throughout Africa.
Now, a scramble to halt the disease in Lagos, Nigeria, the largest city in all of Africa.
But in an epidemic that took 11,000 lives, Nigeria only suffered 8 deaths and was declared Ebola-free in 3 months.
The polio campaign played a huge role in combating Ebola.
The polio campaign, financed in large part by the US government, had put the health infrastructure in place which helped Nigeria combat Ebola.
The polio eradicators in particular, they were incredibly good at disease surveillance. They were very good at knowing how to go house to house, knowing how to do disease tracing, and almost, as much effort was put into communication, how to bring on board important religious leaders, community leaders, how to bring on board women. So they were perhaps, much better equipped because of polio vaccinations.
In the past 2 years, the polio eradication campaign seems to be back on track, with the virus now confined to 3 countries and only 37 cases in 2016. Dr. Larry Brilliant says he hopes to see the world eradicate 2 of the worst diseases in history.
The benefits of not having children suffer from polio or smallpox, they accrue forever and ever. I sure hope we have a world in which there are 2 diseases eradicated so we can start on the 3rd.